Great, that's us live. So, hello, welcome to Time to Talk. And I am joined today by Caroline Child, who is a lovely member of our team, qualified as a health coach and a nutritionalist. Do you want to say anything more about your qualifications, training, exciting
Yeah,
things
yeah,
you've done?
sure. So thank you for having me, Claire. So I've been at the clinic for just over a year now, and I have a diploma in nutrition and lifestyle coaching. So I do work very holistically with people. I don't just talk about nutrition, I talk about everything to do with their lifestyle, because of course everything's connected. Um, a lot of my background is in blood sugar balance. I've coached the diabetes prevention program and also the diabetes remission program. And then more recently, I'm also working alongside my time at the clinic as a health coach at a GP practice in Cambridge. So yeah, it's all good fun and all super interesting, and I'm learning all the time.
Which is, yeah, no, it's great, and that knowledge then is being brought into our team. And as you say, it's really nice that you're not just a nutritionalist, that you have that health coaching, because that's really how kind of we work, isn't it, in terms of just thinking a little bit more broadly about what's happening alongside the nutrition, and being able to think about that with patients, I think is great value.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I think, just it's about behavior change at the end of the day, try not to get stuck. Sometimes people know exactly what they want to be doing with their nutrition. They just need a bit of help kind of making those changes. So
Yeah. So we thought today we would do a session a little bit, we've labeled it supplements. I think because, well, you were running a session for some of the patients here on it, which was well received, but it's also a question that I know you get asked and I get asked a lot in terms of what supplements should I be taking. And also, I think the other bit we're really aware of is that there's a lot of content and information out there that isn't necessarily true. So people are often looking for some truth, and I think they kind of see us as being a good place to seek that out. So when we were kind of thinking about how we would kind of talk about today, because we've only got 15 minutes and it is a big topic, we thought maybe the best thing to start with would be just thinking about, we would both in that conversation really be asking the patient, wouldn't we, about actually what they're eating, because the priority in terms of us getting nutrition and getting those nutrients into our body is through what we're eating. That's kind of the line that you would say as well.
yeah, exactly. I think anyone working in nutrition would always say, if possible, adopt this food first approach, so we can get all the vitamins, minerals, nutrients we need from our food, unless we're excluding any food groups. And yeah, that would be the starting point. There's obviously some exceptions to that, some people who are excluding food groups or perhaps medically have something going on. But for most of us, we can get everything we need and more from our food, because of course if we're eating the actual food as opposed to taking a supplement, we're getting all the additional benefits like the fiber as well, and the help with the digestion and feeling full. So that would be definitely the first thing to mention, isn't it, that we'd try and get everything from food first.
And also the joy, right? So I don't think there's much joy in taking a supplement, but
No.
there's joy in enjoying your food and actually seeing the color in your plate, and actually even the process of cooking and being kind of social around eating. So there's just something just nice about the process of eating. So if we're thinking about that food first world, again, you've just said it yourself, haven't you? We're not excluding particular groups. So we would definitely say that the science says there that we should be trying to eat a balanced diet. So we don't advocate for skipping large macronutrients. So carbs are not bad. We need some carbs in our diet. Obviously, it's great to have more complex carbs rather than those simple kind of sugar and fast acting carbohydrates. But complex carbs each day is really important. Protein. And maybe there's a whole talk on protein on itself in terms of what we do with, even in that diabetic space and the weight management space. But protein's so important and great for, well, I'm doing all the talking, great for all the kind of processes that we've got going on in our body, but can be really helpful in terms of how our body manages the sugars and other kind of those simple sugars that we are maybe taking in on a day-to-day basis. And then fats, again, another thing like carbs, which have had bad press over the years, but we would say are really important.
Yeah, especially for absorbing all our fat-soluble vitamins. They need fat, in order to be absorbed, and controlling our hormone health and so on. So, yeah, just creating that balance. And I think having that balance at every meal as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes we work with clients who are really great for their evening meal, but that kind of goes to pot, early in the day. For example, breakfast is a common time, isn't it, when people, we're not always thinking about, skipping it or maybe not having enough protein. So that's all of that's important.
Yeah. And then we get into so that's sort of big key macronutrients that we want to try and hit with our meals. And then we're getting into the micronutrients, which I guess is the piece that links to the supplements a little bit more, doesn't it? So great ways of us getting that in just with our food. It's that kind of eat the rainbow piece, isn't it? It's avoiding the process.
Yeah. I think concentrating on having nutrient dense foods every day and maybe when we had the group, we were going into the nitty-gritty a little bit, but we talked about the difference between the fat soluble vitamins and the water soluble ones. So the water soluble ones being all of your B vitamins and vitamin C. Because they're water soluble, we don't store them, therefore we need to be eating them, and we need to be eating them every day. And I think that was a key message that we were discussing in the group. Rather than falling into the common trap of thinking, oh, I've had my broccoli this week, therefore I don't need to think about broccoli again. It's including, foods like your brassicas, your leafy greens.
What's a brassica?
Brassicas. That's things like broccoli, sprouts, Brussels sprouts, that kind of thing, cauliflower. It's cruciferous vegetables. Having them daily as opposed to weekly is good. Berries, nuts and seeds. Just trying to get in the habit of having those every day. And it's actually, I do surprisingly often see clients who aren't having enough vitamin C, which is probably one of the easiest vitamins to get. So just making sure we're having something, some fresh fruit like citrus or kiwi, or bell peppers, having it every day. So that would be one takeaway. And as you said, lots of colour for all the lovely polyphenols. And trying to eat whole foods as much as possible, and limit the processed foods. We all have processed foods, don't we? Well, I do in my diet, but just kind of trying to make positive changes where we can.
Yeah. And I think the piece that's come up in here before with all of that is often to do with just planning a little bit, isn't it? So taking that moment, whether it's the weekends or wherever that works for you in terms of planning, but thinking about what we're eating tends to mean that we make those better choices and we've got the right foods in, and all of that makes that much easier. So if we've done all of that and we're coming to the real kind of thing that we were wondering to drill down a little bit in the supplements, there are a couple that we do talk about, isn't there? So number one was vitamin D.
Yeah. So all of us, unfortunately, well, unless you're watching this somewhere outside of the UK, but in the UK, and today is a great demonstration outside, even though it's the end of March. Between, I think, is it the 1st of October and the end of March, we just don't get enough sunshine to synthesize our vitamin D, and we can't get enough from food, even though there are some good food sources of vitamin D. We need the sunlight to top it up. So the NHS recommends that everyone supplements during the winter months with vitamin D. Some population groups might need to supplement all year round. And it's just one, I think, that we can't always tell how much vitamin D we're absorbing or how much we've got. So it's a really good one to test. I would say I often suggest that to clients to test if they're not sure, just to see where they're at.
Yeah, and pretty much anyone that I'm doing blood tests on at the minute is low. Even my patients who are supplementing with the kind of standard dose, across the counter. So it's definitely worth something getting tested. It may be that you need a higher dose than what's in those kind of across the counter kind of medicines. And classically, vitamin D was always put together with musculoskeletal kind of aches and pains, joint things, but we know now it's also really important in terms of our mood and our energy, and all kind of other processes in our body. So you know, in someone who's just not feeling 100%, it can be something very non-specific, and vitamin D can make a massive difference. So being tested, and actually sometimes I'm testing people at the end of the summer and they are still low in vitamin D. And if you are that kind of person, then I'm tending to take, you're going to need to take this all year round. So yeah, there's something in testing for sure, and you know, treating as well for everybody. I wrote an omega-3 down next. What's your take on omega-3?
So omega-3, it's not a vitamin or a mineral, is it? It's a fatty acid that we can only get from food, and a really great source is fatty fish. So if you're eating fatty fish, you probably, I mean, again, the NHS recommends we eat 2 portions of fish a week,
Yeah.
one of which should be oily, but I don't think one is enough actually to get your omega-3 requirements. So you probably want to be eating more like 2 or 3 servings of oily fish a week. You can also get omega-3 from plant sources, so that would be flaxseed, chia seed, walnuts are the best sources. So that there's actually 3 types of omega-3. So that's for your ALA sources, and apparently some people can then synthesize that into the EPA, because apparently vegans can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that's your food first approach.
Yeah.
But again, you know, a lot of us would benefit. It's great for heart health, great for brain health.
Yeah.
So a lot of us really would benefit from supplementing. So yeah, I mean, I would suggest it to a lot of people, a lot of patients. Again, it's a little bit more expensive to test for that one, but it's one that we can test for. And another nice thing to do is to test our ratio between omega-6 and omega-3. There is like an optimum ratio, which I believe is 3 to 1 of omega-6 to 3. Something be pretty hard to guess unless you just looked at your food and thought, actually, I've got quite a lot of processed food here and I'm not eating any oily fish. You probably know it's going to be, you know, a bit out of range.
Yeah, and not everyone's a fish eater, and not everyone likes that kind of type of fish. So, and again, thinking about good quality supplements, I've always been told that the algae sources when it comes to omega-3 is the better way to be accessing that, rather than again your standard cod liver oil kind of capsule that you might find on the supermarket shelf. So there's definitely something about looking at the quality, I think, when it comes to the omega-3 stuff in particular, what we're taking on board. And then we were almost stopping there, weren't we? I scribbled down iron. So I think iron's particularly important if you are a menstruating female. I use it in all my athletes, so male and female. We lose iron through our gut if you're someone who does a lot of sport. So that's always worth knowing. Again, it's something we can test. Something that tends to present itself, I guess, with fatigue and again in athletes, maybe per performance and picking up injuries and things like that. Anything else about iron? Iron's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's not nice to supplement with iron. It's not great on our stomachs.
Yeah. Well, just my only other thought was something we haven't mentioned is that, of course, vitamins and minerals don't work in isolation, do they? They are absolutely working as a team. So if I was working with a client to try and help their iron, then iron pairs nicely with vitamin C. So yeah, helping them, just upping the vitamin C as well. We're back to vitamin C. And I guess just working on ways to increase absorption, it can be useful as well.
Yeah, because I guess that circles me back to something we said before we came on here in terms of some of the things that we can be doing stop us from absorbing the food from the nutrients from the food that we're eating. So things like your kind of coffees and teas alongside your iron-rich food and vitamin C can be stopping you absorbing.
Exactly. Yeah, spacing. You know, it's quite common, isn't it, that we have our tea or coffee with breakfast, but breakfast eggs. But actually, if we can just space them apart and have them maybe an hour before or an hour after, that will help with nutrient absorption. Yeah.
Super. And I then did put down magnesium because you and I it is another one that I get asked a lot about. We went to the Food and Moods conference with Prof. Felice from Australia who was speaking, and I think she said something that we would have been saying up to this point in terms of there's not masses of data for magnesium, but actually a lot of people come and say they find it really helpful. So again, in terms of what she was saying, is that there's not any harm in trying it. And I think that's probably the line that goes with a lot of these other things, would be, it may not be necessarily the thing that's for you, but you could try it and see. Because the science isn't quite there yet. So.
I was going to say, I think the safe dose for magnesium is fairly high. So as you said, that it's, for most people, no harm in trying it. It's definitely something that's depleted by stress. So if you feel like you're having a very stressful time in your life, it might be a nice thing to try. Something I sometimes recommend to clients, because it kind of kills two birds with one stone, is to have an Epsom salts bath. Because apparently the skin is a nice way to absorb our magnesium, and if you're lying in the bath as well, you're relaxing, and it will help with sleep. So that's something we sometimes talk about. I'm just aware, Claire, actually, when we're talking about supplementation, it's probably worth mentioning to check, before anyone goes down the avenue of trying things. It's worth just, if you've got taking any medication or have a health condition, it's worth checking with your friendly doctor to make sure there's no problems with that.
But that's probably it, I think. And again, there's a world of other things that sit on the shelf, often bulk together in, women's health or men's health. But I would often question what's in there, and you might be better taking a good quality, higher dose of one particular vitamin if you're lacking it. Again, going back to the vitamin D, than taking a multi-source kind of vitamin. I think there was something that came out in the press just in the last couple of weeks to do with being on a multivitamin and living longer. I think there would be something I would just, as you say, just have a bit of a check-in and a bit of a personalized take a little bit maybe on what you're taking, and actually circling right back to food being best. If we can get that right, then that tends to tick all the boxes. Super. Great. Well, hopefully that's been useful. As we say at the end of these sessions, if there's any questions, please feel free to message us. I'll pass them on to Caroline, and we'll answer them together. But hopefully that's been useful, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.